speaks for itself, and it was requested, as I understand it, the town council, once upon having heard that the planning board was going into special session, requested from Christine justification for a special meeting. So I wrote that letter to Christine, trying to emphasize the points that I thought justified, going or having a special meeting. And at the same time, I requested that that letter be released to the board. So I think that was the basis upon which town council began her investigation and resulted in her comments before the board tonight. And that's all I have to say. You know, as I said in the letter, I think there's some key points here that the board needs to be acting as a board. When the board makes a decision, I think the board members need to respect that decision. If they disagree with that, then they're free to take that outside the board, but they need to respect the other members in doing so. While there may not have been a legal violation, there certainly was a procedural violation, and I personally found it pretty upsetting to find out that 3 members of the board had taken this action without consultation of any other members. And even more upsetting to find the chairman of this committee in front of the Board of Selectmen 2 Mondays ago, presenting this to the selectmen to put on the warrant article, which certainly gave the appearance of the chairman of this committee endorsing a policy that was totally counter to a position the board had voted on and endorsed and was pursuing. It certainly has created internal dissension on the board. It has embarrassed this board in front of other boards. It was a direct assault on another board and their authority without any due notification, consultation, or consideration. And to me, that created unnecessary conflict, and it really has diminished the standing of this board in town. And I'm quite frankly embarrassed by it.
That's the letter of concern from Rick Mitchell, Planning Board, Mark Johnson.
So the
Better speak up, Mark.
I was asked to help address what the town is hoping to accomplish from the planning board, what the town is hoping to get from the planning board, and how we can help, if possible, the planning board do what it needs to do. So, you know, you know the list. You know the housing needs we have. You know the bylaw changes that we need to look at, whether it's cottage bylaw, accessory bylaw. You know, those issues are well established at this point. They're certainly expanding maybe the Willow Street overlay district, maybe doing another master plan, maybe doing more long-term planning that Claudia's always talking about. There are some initiatives that we need the planning board to tackle, because as a town, we can't just stay only where we're at now. So, you know, Hamilton's not going to change that much. So if we're going to go from 12 o'clock to, if we're going to move 2 degrees or 5 degrees in one direction, you know, the planning board has to organize itself in a way that can help guide the town to which direction. You know, are we moving 5 degrees, 4 degrees, 3 degrees? You know, no one's talking about major changes and, you know, making larger changes in that. We're talking about a little bit of housing here, a little bit of development there, maybe having, you know, expansion of the business district in some ways, or the rights within the business district even. So we had all boards meeting at the beginning of the year, September 4th, to kick that off. And, you know, you guys also have all the special permits to get over. So, you know, those, you know, you guys did a great job on the Willow Street overlay permit. But we just need a lot more output from the planning board. And, and to do that, we just need you guys to stay focused. That's it, you know, so there's nothing else to it. You know, it's let's all find a way to work together to get towards the things that we all need to get done.
Could I, before we respond to that, I have a letter that, going back to the issue of conduct, that Rob McCain wanted read before, because he couldn't be here, and I thought I ought to read it before we get into the subject of us moving ahead. I thought you were going to be talking about planning board conduct,
No,
which
I
is
mean,
what it says on the agenda, so.
as far as I'm concerned, the planning board is capable of guiding and setting its own governance, and you don't need the select board to have any input on it. So I actually asked Christine to be off the agenda when I saw that agenda. I said, just strike me, I don't have to be here. But she was concerned that the planning board could benefit from the overall perspective that the town is hoping that you guys can tackle a couple things at a pretty fast rate now, so that we can put these changes in place. Because none of these changes happen quickly. So that's the message that she asked me to deliver, and I thought it was an appropriate one.
Do you think it's appropriate, Claudia, to do that at this point? Because I have another comment on, that I'd like to bring to Mark.
I think it's only fair to Rob to, he
Well,
has
I'll be
two
helping
letters.
you get into that. I'm next on the agenda after what Peter has to say, or whatever the board has to say.
I wanted to remark just on Mark's comments. The planning board, I believe, has sent a letter to town manager about our budget, because the budget for a town planner, a position that he's sponsoring at town meeting, is stripping the position of Christine from the planning board. So we took a vote last meeting to say, leave our budget alone. If you want to have a town planner come in, fine, but the planning board needs an administrator, which we call a planning coordinator or plan coordinator, and a budgetary position. We can't work with, as a special permit granting authority, subdivision authority, A&R plans, you know all the drill because you've been a planning board member, without a staff. And the way it was written up as a job description, we reviewed that and we sent a letter, I think we sent it this week.
You got it, I've read it.
Okay,
So
we can't go without having some support.
So all of the job descriptions and how you put them for the planning coordinator, spoke to Michael, and, you know, the intention was that the planning director is responsible for those. Now, some of those, they might, you know, for minutes, for example, they might have someone else do the minutes rather than do the minutes, the planning director themselves, or himself first, whatever. But the idea being is that what you articulated as the planning coordinator's functions all had to be folded in. So, and Michael was comfortable with that, because that was how he intended it.
Well, we're not.
No, but, so.
We feel that if the planning director all of a sudden has to be a support staff to the planning board to handle all the applications and the processing of all that work, that they won't get any work done, because Christine already says it's more than a half-time job, it's really a two-thirds job or more, then the planning director is going to be born dead if they really do support the planning board and the function and the process of work that comes before us. The pending applications speak for themselves.
Yeah, so I'll speak for Michael here, because because we haven't spoken at that micro level at the Board of Selectmen. But I do know what Michael feels on that, and that is, let's try it for 6 months, let's see how the planning board level of service is, whether or not the planning board is pleased with the attention and the focus, and whether or not it's getting the things that it needs done. And then just keep evaluating that, and then if there's a problem, address it. But he doesn't want to budget 1.5 people, because he's not sure how much of the broader planning director you actually need more than a half or 40% of a person to do. Because he knows that a professional manager can come in and service some of these issues by reassigning how people cross-train things upstairs. So, he wants to try it for some period of time, but he understands that he doesn't have the budget to do 1.5 people.
Then I would just appeal to the selectmen to use the examples of, say, Ipswich has a town planner with a lot of authority, a lot of ongoing projects, but they also have a planning board and a planning board staff. You can't just not have a staff. And I don't think the town planner is gonna be interested in processing applications to the planning board.
I'll be more than happy to put that in front of the board, selectmen, and so, I'll dig up the details of the positions for Ipswich and bring it in front of the board, for them to consider. So, happy to do that.
So-
With respect to getting more out of planning boards, our meetings start at 7:30, and I think the last one went to 11:15. There's only so many hours that we have to devote to everything in our meetings, so I don't want anyone to think that we're not working on it. But let me say this. When I was in Sherburne, I was on the town advisory committee, which was the warrant article and finance committee combined. And we needed to know what was going on in the town among other boards. So we each had a liaison to one board. I was the liaison to the school system board. And I think it makes sense for our board to do something like that. To have someone go to the selectmen's meeting, to have someone go to the ZBA meetings, and maybe two liaisons, so they can shift off. But I think that kind of interaction would be helpful.
I do want to go on record, I didn't mean to call you guys slackers. That was not what I was
Came
getting.
very close.
But it's,
But I want to not leave you with that impression.
if someone were reading the record, they might come to a different conclusion, but I knew you weren't going there. But I really think that we should have a liaison to some of the bigger boards/committees in town, and then have a normal agenda item to report back. And I know that our time is dear, because we're always slammed, and people may not understand that, but I do think that would make sense.
And we've done that in the past, not so much to, not to the ZBA or not to the selectmen, but to the landfill committee when that was, they were, trying to deal with the dump. I was that, and,
We had the
you've been
patent
on Pat.
committee, we had the
I mean,
CPA,
Right.
we're all on other committees.
We're all on other boards, actually.
No, I'm just saying-
But you're right, but there's no one for, let's say, Concom or, zoning board or anything like that.
Finance committee,
Selectmen.
Right, or select.
well, so, we would keep an eye on that anyway.
Can we both go back to the letter?
Did what?
I was wondering if we could return to, Claudia had requested
I'm
to read.
sorting out paperwork for all of you.
Should I read this letter?
No, it's in here.
No,
I'm
it's a
gonna
different letter.
Hmm?
It's a second letter.
It's just, yeah, that's here.
No, it isn't there. No, this is a different letter.
The March 9th letter.
I wouldn't. Okay.
Well, we've been instructed to Rob, to give out 2 communications, which he wrote before he went away, gave to Claudia and I to distribute tonight, along with case law from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Attorney General's office. And added to that is a letter that Jack Lawrence wrote today addressing the subjects before the board and couldn't be here tonight, and asked sincerely that his letter be distributed to interested parties. But that
So,
doesn't
what are we-
preclude, if you would like to read Rob's letter to the
He had
board.
asked me to read it, I don't know.
I
At
would,
this point.
I would suggest that the board be handed these documents and let them take
Well,
10
that-
minutes and read them.
Can I, before you do this, and I do want to hear it, Claudia, so I'm not interrupting you. This
It's the
gets,
same letter that she had.
understood. Ed, this gets back to the same fundamental issue about how this board operates. And we just heard that we really need to be much more attentive, and we've been instructed numerous times, when there are communications between board members, they need to go to Christine, and Christine then sends them back to other people. Now we have another example of 3 board members conjuring up their own legal opinion on their own without involvement of Christine in distributing them. It's just, this bad behavior just continues, and it's gotta stop, because we're gonna get into even more trouble than we've already gotten into. Claudia?
To whom it may concern, while I appreciate the interest of the members gathered here in taking action concerning the open meeting law, the proper groundwork should have first been established. Town council should review such serious charges as have been levied here, and before dramatizing their impact with an all boards meeting. I also feel that a certain element of discretion should have been practiced when such allegations are made. This is important to the fairness doctrine, which should be a guideline to all town proceedings. Although Rick Mitchell as an individual has the right, and I would argue the duty, to fully investigate transgressions of the open meeting law, it should not be to the town's role to back up such an individual's opinion with this type of proceeding without first developing the town's own well-researched legal opinion. It took little effort to contact the legal authority overseeing the open meeting law, the Attorney General, to determine that these charges leveled by Rick Mitchell are specious. Because of the public nature of the charges leveled by Rick Mitchell, I would like to know if there are other discussions, writings, or correspondence relative to this debacle which have taken place damaging to my reputation. There are issues of defamation of character which need to be addressed. It has already been revealed to me that emails which I had considered private were passed around without my consent. I am concerned that this may lead, please don't editorialize, okay, until I'm finished. I am concerned that this may lead to both misperceptions and misinterpretations. Lastly, I am generally accepting of hearing the opinions of others and feel that a public forum is not only necessary but beneficial to good government. However, for Rick Mitchell to attack 4 members of the planning board in such a vicious and outrageous manner, to be rude and uncompromising in his assertions, and to not have done a thorough and reasonable investigation of the charges he was making, goes well beyond the public discussion and public decorum. I think he should be harshly reprimanded by the members of this gathering, and at the very least asked to apologize in writing individually to each of the members of the planning board he chose to castigate. Yours truly, Robert McCain.
I suggest we pass on. It's been entered into the record, just leave it alone. Rob is not here, and I think the discussion of his opinions, which are strange.
Could you speak up?
I'm sorry, I suggested we move on with the agenda and not go on trying to justify the positions taken by each member or different members of the board. There are many other things that are germane, but defense, this is not the time for defense, it seems to me.
Right.
He's not here, right?
And I'll just point out that the specious accusations were addressed by town council, and they wouldn't have been brought up unless and until I did bring them up, because several members were operating under the radar in violation of public process. So you can't have it both ways. And his emails are not private. He's an elected public official. You can't be circulating emails relative to public policy and expect that they're private. That's the whole point of this discussion, and everybody in this room knows that.
I would like to add that, I volunteered to be on this board, I don't know why, that we are volunteers and we disagree a lot, as you can well imagine. But that is the nature of good government, as far as I'm concerned, is that our job as elected officials is to try to represent as many people as we can. When you ask us, Mark, to work harder and get more of these things done, I agree with you. It is difficult. We were here till 11:30 the other night. That's a late night for me anyway. And, but I think there's something inherently wrong with the way in which this town is functioning. And I think this board and the behavior of the last week is a perfect example. I think for Mr. Mitchell to bring up at 11 o'clock at night this accusatory, inflammatory charge at 11 o'clock at night was inappropriate. For him to tell the chairman of the board to shut up and to tell me that we had to have a meeting this week and that he said, Claudia, you don't know the trouble you're in. There's something wrong with the way in which this board functions. I don't do this. I don't need authority. I don't need this on my resume. I do it because I believe that this is a great town and I want to do the best job I can do. If I've done something incorrect, if I erred, I certainly wasn't specious. I wasn't working behind anyone's back. You know I have worked with you on the Peary project. I did my best. I did my homework. That's my job. And if I disagree with Brian, and boy, do Brian and I disagree, I also agree with Brian occasionally. So that's part of good governance. And to be treated the way I was treated the other night is really inappropriate.
Well, what does the board want to do with the communications from Rob McKeon, who isn't here? He's on vacation with his family.
Well, you know what, I'd love an explanation from Rob on, after having agreed to withdraw the citizens petition and actually going and withdrawing the citizens petition, that the next day he turned around and resubmitted
I don't
the
think we
citizens.
should talk about Rob here. He's not here.
Well, no, I think we
talk
need.
Well, I don't think we should
You
have
talk
that.
about the petition.
I'm not talking about Rob, I'm talking about his actions.
Yes.
When you describe that there is something seriously wrong with this board, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the actions that individual members are taking that are corrosive, corruptive, and destructive of the cohesion of this board. And when they can't be trusted by, and as demonstrated by their actions in developing the citizens petition, then it is incumbent upon, and I'll take full responsibility for it, I apologize if I offended people, but I believe in good government, I believe in honest government, I believe in full disclosure, and I want to be able to trust the people I work with that they're actually going to be professional, honest, and forthright about what they are doing in public for the citizens of this town. And when they don't do that, they're going to get called on the carpet. And if I'm the only person doing it, so be it.
I think if the tables had been turned, I think it goes back to the manner in which we work, both with the select board, with the ZBA. Where's the collegiality in this town? I don't see it, but I'd like to see it. If the tables had been turned, I think I might have said to Mr. Mitchell, do we have a problem? Are you guys starting this petition? Could you tell, I would have at least talked to him about it. I wouldn't have attacked him. I'm very clear about that. I would have said, hey, you guys, let's work this through as a board. What happened here? What should we do about it? I wouldn't have attacked. I wouldn't have brought it to the town council. I wouldn't have brought it to an open board meeting. That's not how I would have operated.
Well, I don't see what's wrong with bringing it to an open board meeting in front of everybody.
But then you go into executive session.
Why
Well,
couldn't we
no.
have had a discussion? All I'm saying,
Well, no.
Ryan, is we
And
could have
that's what
had a
we're doing.
discussion that night. Hey, you guys, this is what I saw. This is what I've heard. What's going on? What should we go? Do you know? Did you overstep your bounds? How did this come about? We could have worked that out that night.
Well, you just got on him for bringing it up at 11 o'clock at night.
Well, 11 o'clock at night is a little late. I turn into a pumpkin at 9:30.
No,
you
I
know
know.
that.
I think the idea of this meeting was really to explain to the Board of Selectmen and the ZBA that we weren't trying as a board to do anything improper and assume other responsibilities of the ZBA in a way that might have offended them. And I think that was the concern, I think that all of us had in terms of our relationship with these other boards, to maintain whatever collegiality we can have with them and cooperation we have with them. I in no way expected tonight to be some kind of evidentiary hearing or investigation as to what happened, because Rob isn't here. So I don't think that we can do that. But it was important to all of us, I thought, to invite other members of the board who may have been offended by what happened, so that there was an understanding of what it was that, the board, as a board, either did or didn't do, in a brief way. But I thought that we wanted to make sure that that was done sooner rather than later, and I think that we made the right decision, so that they do have some idea what happened, but, Rob's not here, so we can't talk in detail about exactly what happened.
Well, and when we decided to do that, Rob had said he agreed that he would withdraw the citizen petition. So what was very confusing to me anyway, was that having withdrawn it, the next day he refiled it, and now it's on the selectmen's agenda, it's in the town warrant and all the rest of it, which
Well,